Are you ready for this?
Yes.
Cammie, this is season 2.
You're listening to the Fight for Together podcast.
I feel like for season 2, we should be smoking new cigars. Instead of these recycled ones from season 1.
Don't worry, these weren't left out all week long. Yeah.
Cigar lighting break. What a way to start off a podcast with a bang.
Welcome to
our podcast. Here's 10 seconds of silence while we selfishly light our cigars on our end. I'm really excited about this topic today.
I'm glad you are.
You're not?
I don't fully... Are we talking about... I think I know what we're talking about.
Hey. Let's do a small match here. You don't...
That's what these are for.
No, not for your half cigar.
All right, good point.
These are my nicest matches. Have you been using them all for just so you're like your halfway lights? Jeez.
Oh, look at that.
Jeez. Do you think we actually get paid to do this podcast? So not only do we not get paid, but we're smoking expensive cigars and you're using my nice matches.
All right, rant over.
Okay, wait. So you're not excited? This is the money one.
Not really. I mean, it's just maybe I am. Not like you though.
Oh, I'm so excited. Okay. We don't have any... Do we have any stuff to talk about first? I don't think we do. We're just going to get right into it. We're not going to listen to any comments right now. So basically, what went down is Casey Niestat, who is... I like him, okay? He was influential for me, as we shared about in the last episode, with video and even with starting a podcast. He came out with this video. And this video is titled, where is it? I don't remember. It doesn't super matter, except for it was his latest video as of now, because it was a response piece. I'm trying to pull it up right now. Sorry. It was a response piece to a New York Times article, and his video was titled, Being Rich versus Being Poor, a video essay. Okay, so we're doing a response to a response, and the original article was called, I don't even know if this is important, but it was a New York Times article that came out at some point. Where's the date? It's not even there. Called Wealthy, Successful, and Miserable. Now, I'm not gonna try and get into the article itself a whole lot, although I will read one line later on. But what we're gonna do is play a few clips from Casey's reaction, his essay, and we're gonna respond to that. Follow? I think everything's clear there. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is this one is like a minute, and this one kind of introduces what this whole New York Times article is all about.
Sunday or something like that, I found this fantastic article in the New York Times, and the headline reads, Wealthy, Successful, and Miserable. The upper echelon is hoarding money and privilege to a degree not seen in decades, but that doesn't make them happy at work. It is a very, very interesting story, article. It's about a lot of things, but they focus on this one character that the journalist met at a reunion, and this guy is miserable. He is like a Harvard business school type who works in a hedge fund or something, and this is the subject of this story, this guy makes $1.2 million a year, but the story is about how he is miserable at work. It was insanely stressful work, done among people he didn't particularly like. He earned about $1.2 million a year, and he hated going to the office. I feel like I'm wasting my life away, he told me. When I die, is anyone gonna care that I earned an extra percentage point of return? My work feels totally meaningless.
Okay, so those are all clips from the article. Well, not all, but he read some clips from the article. And that's basically it. I don't to me, the article itself is not that interesting. But this journalist goes back to some sort of, I don't know if it's a high school reunion or what, but there's all these old high schoolers there. Basically, he meets the rich guys who are making Uber money, and they're kind of not super happy. Surprise, surprise. And then he talks to some of the poorer folks who are happy. And then he puts out this article. Okay. Big deal, right? But then, this is what's interesting to me. Later on in the video, this is Casey's response to that article after Casey posts about this article on Twitter.
So I tweeted this article, and there was kind of a lot of feedback in my Twitter thread. I think it was from people who just read the headline, but a lot of like really valid feedback that was like, oh, boo-hoo, poor millionaire is not happy. That was the sentiment, and I appreciate that. And I was thinking a lot about that. I was thinking about like that platitude, money won't solve your problems, or money won't solve all your problems. What a crock of shit.
Okay. So this is where it gets really interesting, is he posts the article, a bunch of people post the article, then there's this kind of backlash, that whole like, oh, boo-hoo, you're not happy because you have money, that I think is so fascinating. Mm-hmm. And what's fascinating to me, there's a lot of things that are fascinating to me, but one of the things is these rich people weren't trying to publish this article at all. Like, the person who was writing it wasn't rich, if that makes sense. And he's just reporting on his experience. Mm-hmm. So he's going to a bunch of people just at a party and being like, yo, bro, what's up? How's it going? And the guys are being like, dude, I don't know, man. My life is like, I'm not really enjoying it. It's not like super cool. And the guy like makes these observations himself, just what appears to be a middle-class guy, I think. Mm-hmm. And then goes and says, man, I talked to the rich folks and they weren't very happy. And I talked to the poor folks and they actually seemed just as happy or happier in some cases than the rich folks. The article gets published and goes a little viral. And the response is, shut the hell up, rich people. Boo-hoo. No one's going to feel bad for you. As if they were asking for sympathy.
Mm-hmm.
But,
it's like the other part went whew, like right over people's heads. The other part of like, I wonder why the poor people are just as happy or happier than the rich people. That's interesting.
So there's a bit of a, strikes close to home to me. Boy, does it strike close to home.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's my little disclaimer / personal story. I used to make a lot of money. 10 years ago? 7 years ago?
Mm-hmm. But before that, you didn't make...
Well, I'm not going to talk about that yet.
Okay.
But 7 or 8 years ago, I was making approximately $1 million a year. Maybe I might have made 1.2 million, which is exactly what they said in the article. But numerous years, I made more than $1 million. And at the time, it was more money than I ever thought. I never thought I would make $1 million in a lifetime. So to make $1 million in a year, more than $1 million, it surpassed anything in my wildest dreams or imagination. But, and this is the truth, this is a fact, I was more miserable in those years than I think I've been in my entire life. And it was so impactful to me that I've spent the last 6 years trying to figure out how to write about it.
Yeah.
And one of the facts or a story that came out was the work that the loose title, the working title of the book that I've been writing is called Disappointed Millionaire. And I took it to this agent and she was like, that title's not going to work. She goes, because people are going to be like, oh, boo-hoo, look at the poor disappointed millionaire. It was exactly what they said.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not even telling you what to believe. I'm not telling you money doesn't answer your problems or any of that yet. All I'm saying is my story is I was the richest I'd ever been in my entire life, making more money than I had made my entire life. My stress levels were higher than they'd been my entire life. I was the most overweight and unhealthiest I've been my entire life. I had headaches almost every single day. I convinced myself that I needed to go get a massage weekly just to maintain baseline health, but I never got the massage because I didn't want to spend any money doing it because I still considered it a ridiculous use of money. That was what those years looked like for me. And I don't want to say that it was all bad.
Yeah.
Because we did go to Hawaii. I'm trying to think of other ways we splurged. I mean, we went to the Bahamas. Yeah. So we had a few $10,000 vacations.
We ate out a lot.
I ordered a lot of stuff on Amazon. I had a tennis club membership and I had a private tennis trainer. I had a personal assistant that I hired to play tennis with my kids because I didn't have time to play tennis with my kids.
We bought some property.
Yeah.
I think it helped us pay off our mortgage on our old house.
So that's like where I'm coming from in regards to this.
Yeah.
So this question though that Casey then goes on to answer in the rest of his video is kind of, I think, along the lines saying it's almost like a response to the rich people who, I think he's putting words in their mouth, but as if the rich people are saying, oh, money's not important when it comes to happiness. So then his next little case is kind of saying, well, this is how important money actually is.
Money will literally solve every one of your problems. Money will solve your problems. This idea that money won't solve problems, it's bullshit. When I was dirt poor, money would have solved every one of my problems. I was lucky not to have health issues or other, you get the idea. Money would have solved all my problems. And I think that's why people respond to just this headline with such emotion, is because it's like, it feels so tone deaf when you have nothing to hear this idea that money won't solve your problems. I thought about it further. Okay, ready? Rich or poor, we all face these problems that I'll call life problems. Life problems are things like finding happiness and finding love and a sense of fulfillment in your life and a sense of purpose maybe in your career, etc. These are life problems. These are problems we all, rich or poor, encounter. Money won't solve these problems. But when you're broke, on top of, and I mean that literally and figuratively, on top of these problems, you've got money problems. And money problems are things like, how am I gonna pay rent? How am I gonna pay for food? I'm sick and can't afford to go to the doctor. I can't get a job because I can't drive to work. I don't have any nice clothes to wear to that job interview, things like that. And I think the hardest part of money problems is that when you have money problems, they can drown out these other issues. Like, if you're feeling down in life, it's hard to work on your happiness when you literally might not know where you're gonna sleep. It's hard to like dwell too much on a relationship when you literally don't know where your next meal might come from. And you're not exactly worried about fulfillment at your job when you have no way to get there and you got no clothes to wear. And you get the idea.
So this part gets, I think, like a little confusing because what he does is he actually physically draws out this diagram, and it has life problems, which he starts off talking about happiness, love, fulfillment, and purpose. And then above it, he draws this diagram called money problems. And those are things like housing, food, healthcare, transportation, clothing, etc. Now, I think if we're going to use this as an analogy, to me, a better analogy might be like you have this giant field that is life problems, happiness, love, fulfillment, and purpose. And in front of that field, you have a wall. And that wall is housing, food, healthcare, transportation, and clothing. And you can't get to the field or even see the field with this wall there. So his kind of case is, well, these people are playing in the field and they're talking about the field, but he uses the word tone deaf because you're talking to people that they don't even have access to the field because they're worried about how they're going to get to work or how they're going to pay their medical bill and stuff like that. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I think this is also the subject of a tweet by Hank Green, if you guys know who he is, that he tweeted out a week or two ago. And this is what his tweet says. If a person who benefits hugely from having money ever tweets about how money doesn't really solve people's problems. Wait, what? Oh, sorry. You know what? I slaughtered that. If and then it's parentheses, a person who benefits hugely from having money, on parentheses, ever tweet about how money doesn't really solve people's problems, please berate and then unfollow me. Kind of jumping on this bandwagon of like, that's tone deaf. I am where I am because of money. And money does solve problems, at least some of them. And the ones Casey Niestat points out, again, are housing, food, healthcare, transportation, and clothing. So, I don't know. That's what I want to talk about. Because this really kind of, it pisses me off a little bit.
How do you explain poor people who are happy? I know there's a lot of poor people who aren't. But how do you explain the ones who are? How did they get to that field when they don't have the right housing or the right food?
That
because
is a great
isn't there
question.
Both of those kinds of people? Aren't there happy poor people and happy and unhappy poor people?
I think what they're saying is that because in the field is happiness, love, fulfillment, and purpose, and you can only get there if you have housing, food, healthcare, and transportation and clothing. But what I would ask about that requirement, that supposed wall that you have to climb over, is whose definition of housing are we talking about here? I mean, unless you're literally homeless on the street, the homes that the poorest people have in America seem to me to be better than the worst homes people had 200 years ago. Maybe with the exception of the 1% in castles. But I mean, the poorest people in America have electricity, for Christ's sake. You know, and have some form of heat. I mean, and even have access to like internet. And I mean, I'm surprised he didn't put cell phones up there because right now that is seen as a mandatory requirement. And I'm fine with cell phones. I'm not saying that I have a problem with cell phones or housing, but I'm just saying if our definition of what is a basic human need in order to be happy is whatever is culturally, what's the word I'm looking for? Up to par, average, culturally.
The cultural expectations.
Which, by the way, has put our nation and us as individuals in massive amounts of debt to achieve.
Yeah.
So you could say it's all borrowed. It's not even like real. It's inflated. Whatever sense of housing, food, healthcare, and transportation we've seemed to have bought.
Yeah.
We haven't even done it with our own money. But if he is saying, oh, you need to have a car, you need to have an individual fucking automobile that can take you up to 60 miles per hour, something that no one has had in all of human history. You need to have access to healthcare. Healthcare is a tricky one for me. That's like a whole nother animal that people feel entitled to access to the system. And
it's also, I don't know. Like, I know I'm getting existentialist here, but happiness, love, and purpose and fulfillment, those are all very abstract things that I don't think only depend on the housing, food, healthcare, transportation, clothing. I think it all depends on the person and their viewpoint, their perspective on life. Like, if they're owed those things, or if those things are supposed to be there, and if they're not there, then I think if you feel like they should be there, but they're not there, I think you would be unhappy. But if you think, my happiness doesn't depend on that, it depends on something else. And what is that something else? I don't know. For people, it could be who they actually think they are, like that they're worth something apart from having housing, food, healthcare, transportation, clothing, a job, a certain kind of job, making a certain amount of money.
damn, you're going big picture quick.
Yeah,
I like it. I knew I married you for a reason.
Well, and it's hard because I think that abstractness it's hard to go there.
Well,
I get it.
Can we back up for 1 second?
Yeah.
Let's say that housing, food, healthcare, transportation, clothing are in fact basic human needs.
Okay. Yeah.
Food. Let's say they are.
Some stuff.
What level is required for you to feel a level of safety or taken care of, or to be able to focus on those other things?
I think it all depends on where you live.
Okay, one definition though, let's just say survival, like base survival. Like, we don't want to die.
Okay, you need some kind of shelter.
So you need a housing that's going to keep you from dying.
To protect you from the elements.
And then the amount of food you need to keep from dying. That's the thing, like, I mean, and we ate, so what Cammie was saying before, we've lived in, we were poor before. I mean, poor by
American standards.
Poor by American standards. We were below the poverty line, technically. Mm-hmm. I think our first couple years of marriage, we made $16,000, maybe $20,000 for 2, 3, 4 people. So we were poor. We were on welfare. We were getting peanut butter and cheese from the government. Mm-hmm. 1-bedroom apartment with 4 people living in it. Best year of my life.
Yeah. Which
isn't entirely true, but it was awesome. Like, I don't have any misgivings about it.
Yeah.
And we had health care from the government, but we never used it even.
And I mean, we had like checkups, but that was about it.
Transportation, we did have, at one point we had 1 car.
That and barely
then
worked.
And then we got a car that we had to push to jumpstart that was given to us for free.
Yeah. So,
and we've always had clothing, but
yeah.
I mean, at that point, we got all of our furniture out of the dumpster, I remember. Mm-hmm. Not even a dumpster, it was the Goodwill dumpster. So it was the stuff that Goodwill rejected, mm-hmm. which is kind of funny. But I guess my point is, when people say housing, they don't mean 4 walls and a roof. They mean a house that gives them a certain feeling. It's even an abstract thing. And even when we're talking about food, we're not talking about people that are actually starving in America. And I would say there's less than 1% that's actually starving in America. If you're that, you're probably not listening to this podcast. So I'm not talking to that person. Mm-hmm. But I'm talking to the average person that's, let's say, making less than 100K. They're making around 60K, family of 1, 2, 3, or 4. And they're feeling like, I can't focus on happiness, love, and fulfillment right now because I have bills to pay. That's who he's talking to, I think. Mm-hmm. And his point is, yeah, you know, you're tone deaf if you're talking about happiness, love, fulfillment, and purpose, because they're all worried about paying the bills. And the message to those people should be, yeah, get a bigger house, get nicer food, get better health care, get better transportation, get better clothing. Because no one's walking around naked or threadbare. Mm-hmm. I mean, even the clothes we got, a lot of them were out of the dumpster.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm just going to lay out my beef in a nutshell. This is why my book was going to be titled Disappointed Millionaire. I didn't care about a lot of those things, the housing, food, healthcare. Like, from a competitive perspective, I was kind of always outside the box, and I didn't really find myself competing much with the culture in those ways. I was happy without much. But then when I got a shit ton of money, I thought, oh, this will mean now I'll have time to focus on the bigger things in life, and I'll actually have more power and be happier and better off. And that's when, looking back, I could see that in a way, the whole thing was kind of an illusion.
Yeah. And
like,
that's what is so sad to me, that this is the takeaway from this article is,
not the article of Casey's essay, you mean?
Yeah, his takeaway, but even other people's takeaway from his tweet of the article is like, fuck off, millionaire. Like, you don't know anything. It's like, whoa. What if he's like, the millionaire is kind of not, I know the millionaire is not doing this, but to me, I feel like the millionaire is saying, just so you know, I'm at the top and it's not working.
I got everything that you guys want.
Yeah.
And let me just tell you, maybe you don't want it.
But the thing is most people have to experience it themselves before they'll listen. And most people won't. Most people won't become millionaires. And then there will be a few people that maybe will listen. So that's why I think about even your book. I'm like, I don't even know if people are going to listen.
And I get that. But they also spend their whole life, people are happier chasing an illusion.
Oh, yeah.
Than they are. I mean, because even there's, I think this in a romantic sense, you know, there's fun and excitement in the chase. Yeah. Like, our dating period is one of the most fun because I didn't know, like, if I was going to catch you. Yeah. And then once I got you, I was like, And it was exciting in a different way. But I think there's an illusion that, hey, guys, like, the lower classes in America still doesn't have enough housing, food, healthcare, and transportation. And like I said, I'm going to spend just 1 minute on the healthcare thing because I think that's going to be a controversial one. If people are actually dying and aren't getting healthcare, then I think they have a case. You know, like, if I don't get that pill, I'm going to die or die sooner or something like that. But if we're just talking about comfort, like, you get those pills because you're entitled to be sick for a shorter amount of time or to not experience sickness for as long, or what I think a lot of the American medicine system is for, which is actually peace of mind, or it's actually a status symbol, and people can fight me on this, but I'm not going to get into it. But just the stats would say the American life expectancy rate is not the best in the world. It's not the longest, but it's the most expensive. So people are buying something. They're just not buying health. And I think a lot of the things that the reason why people buy cars and the types of cars they buy, instead of taking a bus or riding a bike, it's not for health. It's for status. And when you spend your whole life not being able to distinguish between those two, and you think, oh, these are actually all needs. Having a big house, having each person having their own bedroom is a need. One, you're ignoring most of human history. You're ignoring most of international living standards. But the worst thing is that when you actually get it, you actually are not going to be any closer to achieving those things in the field, which is happiness, love, fulfillment, and purpose. Because those things, and this is what the rich people realize, they don't come with a bigger house. They don't come with, when you buy 100 cars, they still don't have them.
Well, and I could count on two hands right now the rich and famous people that have killed themselves because they've gotten to that point and there's no more illusion for them to chase. And so it actually, the illusion's not there anymore, which is actually really dangerous.
And people are saying, shut up, don't talk about the illusion not being there. It's all better. We want to pretend the illusion's there. I mean, they're not using those words, but the way that they're pressing people that, I mean, rich people, they are allowed to tell their story too.
Yeah. That's actually what pissed me off the most about Casey's video was I felt like he was crapping on the feelings of this rich dude. And I don't fucking care if he's rich. He has feelings. Like, why are we saying like he can't have feelings?
And that was the hardest thing in my period of having crazy amounts of money was I remember one time I lost this $80,000 deal. And I remember I just had this feeling I can't go to my friends right now and share that with them because all they'll hear is, oh, the rich guy lost $80,000. As if I'm not entitled to feel disappointment, rejection, all these things that every person feels on every level. And to me, this is a systemic thing that we do as a society is we rank people and we tell rich people their feelings aren't valid. We tell kids, oh, you didn't get a lollipop. Oh, stop being a spoiled brat and a baby. Where we've learned that the disappointment that a 2-year-old can feel for not getting a lollipop is just as legitimate as the disappointment I can feel as an adult when I lose my job. And I like to rank mine as more valuable and more important. But the feeling is the same. And when we make a habit of discounting other people's feelings...
you dehumanize someone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So there's another story that was really made an impression on me over the years in researching for this book. And it's this guy named Marcus Pearson who goes by the screen name of Notch on Twitter. And he was the guy that founded Minecraft and sold it to Microsoft for $2.5 billion and basically like outbid every celebrity to buy the biggest mansion in Beverly Hills. And was just, I mean, you can imagine $2.5 billion overnight. Okay. So he's like not the richest guy in the world, but he's up there. And he starts sending out these tweets that are just like they were the real stuff. So this one's from August 29th, 2015. And it says, hanging out in Ibiza with a bunch of friends and partying with famous people, able to do whatever I want. And I've never felt more isolated. Okay, so the Ibiza, I think that's Spain, some like rich, naked beach. Party, spring break central. And so that's one tweet. I'm going to read some more of these. This one's from August 29th of 2015. In Sweden, I will sit around and wait for my friends with jobs and families to have time to do shit, watching my reflection in the monitor. This one's from August 29th, same date, I guess. When we sold the company, the biggest effort went into making sure the employees got taken care of. And now they all hate me now. Same day. Found a great girl, and she's afraid of me and my lifestyle, and went with a normal person instead. He had a whole string of these, and was talking about how he wasn't able to hang out with any of his friends because they all had jobs. And basically how lonely he was. And he very quickly, like, he didn't obviously delete the tweets, but he apologized for him and said, like, oh, I shouldn't have done it. And I was so bummed out that he apologized because I felt like for a moment, the veil was pulled back on what it's actually like to have a lot of money when you've achieved it, you've arrived, and you feel like you're supposed to feel good, and you're supposed to not feel lonely, and you're supposed to be happy, but you're not. Cammie just went and put Rainier to bed. So did you catch any of those tweets? So basically this rich guy who sold this company, he had all these tweets that were just like, I mean, I think the best one is that first one where he said, he just feels more isolated. And
And people wrote him off because they said this thing. They said, oh, what right do you have to complain? Instead of the other route is to be like, man, this race that we're all on, this ladder that we're all climbing, maybe it's leaning on the wrong building. But instead, people are throwing stones at him, basically, kind of like this Casey Neistat style, and being like, that's tone deaf. You have no right to speak to the people that don't have health care or don't have food or don't have a house. When actually the main message should be, or could be, I think, what do the people who are fighting for still with, we're dealing with transportation and we're dealing with food or rent or whatever, what questions could they be asking themselves now in light of this truth that more will not solve problems? And that's what I think actually comes out when you look at this picture that Casey drew of housing, food, healthcare. When you realize that everyone listening to this is not dying. If you're listening to a podcast, it means you have the internet, so you have more information than anyone in human history. It means you have headphones or a phone or a speaker, which is a complete luxury item. But I'm not making fun of you. I'm just saying this is the facts, and that's great. I'm really glad we're at this state. But when we're saying, I'm not going to have happiness, love, or fulfillment until I have my basic human needs met, we're not talking about basic human needs anymore. We're talking about being addicted to something else.
Yeah.
And I think that something else is more. Just more, period.
Chasing more and more. Yeah.
And people on the low end of the spectrum are addicted to more. And the only difference between them and the high end of the spectrum in America is the people that have it, they realize that it never ends. And, oh, crap. You know what? We need that book because I was going to have you read that section from it.
Which book?
The Power of Now.
Oh, I can go get it.
Sorry, folks. We're kind of doing a late night double podcast. Trying to put kids to bed at the same time. Rough transition, beginning of season 2 here. But one of the stories that was influential to me was when I was making a lot of money. I was in this club. It was basically like a millionaire's club. And to be in it, you had to be basically a millionaire. And we had these pretty fun meetings and monthly meetings, this group of guys that I hung out with all the time. And we went to this retreat in Canada, and I was in charge of this particular retreat or discussion that I had with these guys in my small group, forum group. Like I said, these guys are all millionaires. And just one of the stories that stands out to me was this guy was, at one point, he was wondering if he had an alcohol problem because he spent 3 nights in a row. He spent more than $17,000 at the bar each night. Those were some of the things that were talked about with this group. We'll read that in a little bit. And we charted out our life. And this was not, what I'm going to share with you guys was not the purpose of this exercise at all. But it was a fascinating byproduct. We charted out our life with every job that we had, and we ranked it from -10 to +10. Starting with like the paper route you started off with to wherever people were at now, which most of them were the most successful they'd ever been in their life at that moment, including myself, financially speaking. But what was fascinating was in terms of happiness, most all of them ranked the happiest they had ever been was like their first job when they delivered pizza and listened to fucking rock and roll and smoked pot in the kitchen and got free pizza. That was the happiest they'd ever been. And at first I thought that was a coincidence. And then like I'd listen to the next guy, and they charted out on paper and they shared it with the whole group. There's like 8 of us in this hotel room. And the next guy would go. And there's a story after story of how they were all like looking back at the good old days of the freedom they felt. They had these things like happiness, love, fulfillment, and purpose. When you got your first job, when you felt independent, you're like, I can buy a Walkman. And then now they're all managing these $1 million companies with, at that time, I probably had, 30 employees. And, we had a $5 or $10 million company, and I was thinking, this has got to be a $20 or $40 million company. And everyone's living in houses that if they're making $10 million a year, they're, everyone's leveraged like crazy. So they're still double booked on appointments, and they're, if they could afford a $1 million home, they live in a $5 million home, just like everyone else. Everyone else, if they have $100,000, they buy a $500,000 house and they borrow the other 80%. And rich people do the same thing.
Yeah.
So they're living under more pressure because they actually owe more.
Right.
And that's when I saw, it was just so fascinating seeing this. And I watched this group of people, and that was the beginning of the end for me in terms of that lifestyle, because I was like, oh, these were the people. Like, at first I wanted to be broke, and I was like, okay, I'm not a very good broke person. And then I was like, okay, well, fuck it. I'll just be rich, Might as well just have it all. And I could see the people that were actually even richer than me, and I was like, I don't want to be like them either. But I find it so hard because, and then this Casey guy is saying like, oh, well, you can't tell that to people because that makes you tone deaf to talk about that. And I'm like, no. Like, to me, that's codependence on a massive scale. If we're saying, oh, like, no, just keep on telling the people that are fighting for quote unquote.
Keep climbing that ladder.
Keep climbing.
Yeah.
Like, happiness is on the other side.
It's a burning building, but keep climbing that fucking ladder.
Like, no, like, I think if you're on the other side of that, I don't want to say you're obligated, but if that's your story, if you are disappointed, bring your fucking truth and share that story.
You have to be willing to get some stones thrown at you, apparently.
And I get it. In America, I think there is something to be said for having a certain amount of money. I don't know what that money is, maybe to be able to own a house or not be out of debt. But once again, all the richest people I know, they still had debt. It wasn't about a quantity of money. It was actually about a lifestyle of more. That was, in fact, our date is coming up where we celebrate being out of debt. I think it was like 7 or 8 years ago for us that we paid off our mortgage. Mm-hmm. And I share that story with people every year on Facebook or whatever. And I always feel guilty about it because I always know some asshole is going to say basically this and say like, oh, you're tone deaf. Like, I can't afford to get out of debt. And I have to like steel myself up and remember that our getting out of debt did not have to do with making a certain amount of money, mostly. Because we had money for a long time before we were out of debt. We just kept on accumulating more and more debt. Mm-hmm. When we got out of debt, it was another decision altogether, which was to get off the treadmill.
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm so passionate about sharing this message with Gen Pop is because if you are waiting for some amount of money out there
to give you happiness, love, fulfillment, purpose,
I just want to say, be prepared for that moment to never come. And I'm not saying it will never come. I just want to say, don't be surprised if you make $60K, $100K, 1.2 mil.
I think it's easier for people to chase that illusion than to actually find happiness, love, fulfillment, purpose from somewhere else. That's probably why people keep doing it.
Sorry, relighting my cigar.
Yeah.
As I talk to you about how you shouldn't care about money.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a negative way of putting it. But the positive way of putting it is this. Is if you knew that these things were never going to come from any magical dollar amount. And by the way, one way to prove my point is by asking this question. Look at how much you're making now. And there's a good chance for a lot of you that it's more than you've ever made. And there's a good chance that even for a lot of you, it's more than you ever dreamed. I mean, remember when you're in high school and for me, I got my first job and, well, even like in 5th grade, I couldn't believe people would pay me $10 or $5 to wash their car. I thought I was printing money. And I thought, oh my gosh, And then I got a job where I got $100 paycheck, and I could not believe that I had $100 that would just like come to me. It felt like I was robbing the bank. And I thought, and then, we got married, and I was making, even when I had $18,000 a year, I thought we felt rich. We would like go out to eat once a week, and we'd split a meal, and we got milk from the government. I mean, I was like loving my life. And then I made $60,000, and I was like, holy crap, 60,000, And every step that I make, I thought was beyond my wildest dreams.
Yeah.
But I got used to it. So that was a side tangent. But going back to where we were, if you knew that there was no dollar amount out there anymore, if you looked at the past, your own past, and if you look at these people like Marcus Pearson and this guy making 1.2 million, or even us, whoever, and you think, okay, well, you know what? Maybe the next raise is not going to be the thing. Or maybe it's not the next decade, or maybe it's not retirement that's going to finally get me over that wall. The wall doesn't actually exist. The question I would ask is, what would you do today differently? What would you stop waiting for? Whether it's writing that song, writing that book, taking piano lessons, reading a book, taking up a hobby. I don't know. And most people say, I don't have time. I can't do this. I don't know. But now we're actually getting it somewhere. I think that's where the excuses really come up. But what we've encouraged people a lot, and this is where my real passion is if you really care about something, do it once a week and stop making excuses. And to me, this is just the ultimate excuse. And Casey is just making the ultimate excuse even harder by legitimatizing these things. And I'm not saying these are like good things.
Yeah. But
even broke ass people, most of them, I mean, and I really, there's a few out there, and some of you guys listening to this, you're in that case. But I hope that maybe with some reprioritization, if you cancel fucking Netflix or your internet or whatever it is that seems life or death but really isn't, and you spend 1 hour a week writing your book, or I don't know what your thing is, sitting in a field, learning yoga. I don't care, but whatever it is that you feel like you want to do someday, but you're not doing someday. And I'm talking about the free things. I'm not saying, some people want to like travel all of Europe. Like, okay, I'm not promising that ever to anyone. But some of the best things, this happiness, love, fulfillment, purpose, like that's what you pointed out in the beginning, Cammie. How come some poor people are feeling this now? Those things.
I know they exist because I've met them. But
those people.
Yeah.
Where'd you meet them?
Other countries, not this country, which I think is interesting too. Yeah.
So there's one more story. Man, I did not think we were going to go this long, but there's one more parallel story I want to share, which is with my racquetball guys. So I play racquetball 3 days a week. And there's this funny dynamic where it's a game. Like these guys, they get into it, where they're like cussing at themselves and each other, and basically like to feel good about yourself, you got to beat the other team. That's the whole vibe on the court. And you're like, you guys suck, we're awesome, And I see it as a giant fucking joke. Because and this has like kind of been a hobby of mine. About 5 years ago, I started approaching the racquetball court and just seeing like what really matters here and how can I speak truth and love into any situation. So instead of demeaning my opponent just because they make a good shot at my expense so I don't get the point, just being like, damn, that was an amazing shot. I really appreciate that. And that's my way of stepping out of the game, that my identity comes from how many points I get. And in order to feel good about myself, you have to suck and I have to beat you. But I noticed that makes me less popular on the court because in a way, everyone kind of saying, no, this is really important. Like this game fucking matters. Like, you need to bring that level of intensity to fit in. And the guys don't really like it when I even say nice things to them if they're on the other team. I'll be like, hey, nice shot. And they're like, I mean, no one says it, but I have this feeling they're kind of like, shut up. Like, you're supposed to be hating me now. And I'm like, I don't hate you. I just am enjoying being here. I'm enjoying being alive. But they're like, no, like, this is competition. Like, this is like, you know, and there's this kind of like self-talk and this like culture vibe that everyone needs to like say that this really matters, even though none of it matters. I mean, you leave the racquetball court and like, you know, you go home and no one cares or even remembers the games from a week or two ago.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling in a way that this like rat race thing, everyone's like, no, this really matters. Like, all these things are super essential. We got to climb and work and like buy stuff and get more. And everyone's like, yeah. And then a few people are like, like, you know, I have everything and it's kind of a fucking joke. Like, the game is a joke. Like, if you got food, that's really cool. And if you have a roof over your head, like, that's really cool. But at the end of the day, like, it doesn't really matter. And people are like, shut up, you idiot. That's tone deaf. Get out of here.
Yeah.
I don't know. Oh, dang
You're gonna
it.
cricket me?
Yep, I am. I had this.
When do I get to read?
Oh yeah. Okay, let me play Casey's conclusion, and then I'm gonna let you read because I want to hear you reading. This is what Casey concludes.
If you are struggling financially and someone tells you money won't solve all of your problems, chances are the person saying that is someone who's never actually been broke.
So what if
You guys catch that? I'm gonna play it again.
If you are struggling financially and someone tells you money won't solve all of your problems, chances are the person saying that is someone who's never actually been broke.
So what if someone is saying that who's broke or been broke? Then what? Then how are you going to delegitimize that?
He doesn't have room for that. He just totally says, okay, basically, my story is invalid. The only story that's valid is the echo chamber that says, no, money buys happiness, basically. Like, you have to agree to that. Otherwise, you're delegitimatized.
Yeah.
All right, you going to read for us?
Yep.
This is from the book The Power of Now.
By Eckhart Tolle. Gratitude for the present moment and the fullness of life now is true prosperity. It cannot come in the future. Then in time, that prosperity manifests for you in various ways. If you are dissatisfied with what you have got, or even frustrated or angry about your present lack, that may motivate you to become rich. But even if you do make millions, you will continue to experience the inner condition of lack, and deep down, you will continue to feel unfulfilled. You may have many exciting experiences that money can buy, but they will come and go and always leave you with an empty feeling and the need for further physical or psychological gratification. You won't abide in being, capital B, and so feel the fullness of life now. That alone is true prosperity.
So, like, how I would summarize that is however you feel now, you add some commas and zeros to that, to your net worth, bank account. There's a good chance you're going to feel that exact same way then.
Yeah.
So if you're stressing out and don't think you have enough and are always thinking about tomorrow and the next project and think that your last project sucked, when you have $10 million to your name, guess what those people think about? They're worried about tomorrow. They're worried about who they are and what people think about them, and they think their last project sucked, in my experience.
Yeah, it's crazy how he just says you'll still feel unfulfilled, even though that was one of the things that Casey said money buys. Money buys fulfillment, right? Wrong.
Keep on talking. I need to change the
Okay. Yeah, this is the part I'm not very good at. Keep talking.
What about anything else from that article?
This? Oh, the article.
Or sorry, what you just read.
Oh. Well, I think that's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people because then they have to face the fact they have to figure out, well, if money doesn't buy happiness, love, fulfillment, what the hell does? Does anything buy it? Or what does?
So the one line I am going to quote from the original New York Times piece, it's a question actually, and it says this: are Google employees who work 60 hours a week but who can eat many of their meals, jeez, that's annoying, or freeze their eggs on the company's dime more satisfied than a startup founder in Des Moines who cleans the office herself but sees her dream become reality?
Freeze their eggs. Is
I
that
guess Google pays for you to freeze your
your
eggs.
eggs? Like in my ovaries?
Your eggs.
Oh, wow. What a perk.
Like, basically, they have the top healthcare in
Whoa.
the planet. The best
Dang.
healthcare. I mean, healthcare that we never even thought was possible, and now people view as like almost a base human need.
Wow.
And my conclusion with Cammie's kind of point is that as we look at this list that appears to be this wall, this housing, food, healthcare, transportation, and clothing, most of what we say when we see those things, it's not actually a house that we want, but it's some of these deeper things that we're striving for: happiness, love, fulfillment, and purpose. When we buy a house, that's what we're actually looking for. Mm-hmm. We're not looking to satisfy basic. If you look at the house we bought now, the size it is, the sexiness it is, the like, you know, it being close to this or that, like usually it speaks to not a base necessity, but we're trying to fill something. And I'm not saying that's even bad. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying let's call it for what it is, and let's ask this question: did it work? Mm-hmm. And sometimes it does, but not for very long.
Right.
And it keeps us from actually asking the bigger question. So people then assume, well, I must not have bought a big enough house. I need a bigger house with a bigger yard or healthier, more organic food to feel a sense of security
So
or like a good
maybe
parent.
this millionaire who's miserable got to the point where he's like, I've gotten it all, and still like the illusion is like falling down.
I think you get to a certain point and you can see down and you're like, climbing further on this ladder isn't going to do it. Mm-hmm. I need a different ladder. And that's when a lot of people get depressed.
Because they can't find the other ladder, don't know the other ladder exists.
Because they're trained not to even
does.
ask that question.
Yeah.
When you're just told to climb.
And then they're told to shut the fuck up by
Yeah.
the masses. That's helpful.
So, yeah, that's that. What do you guys think about that? Yeah.
Let us know.
Leave a comment. Rate our podcast. Join our Patreon. Subscribe. Okay, because that'll give us happiness, love, fulfillment, and purpose. Okay, cool. We have some questions that we can go to. Let me see if I can find my... I would really like for season 2 to know where my sound effect is. Is it this one? Nope. I feel like it's over here. Nope. This? Nope. Ugh. Dang it. You? You know, fuck it. That's gonna have to do it for now. Okay, here's the voice message.
Hi, Cammie and Ben. I have more of an explicit question for your question period. I'm just wondering if you think masturbation is inherently wrong, or only if it is used as an unhealthy or obsessive escape from dealing with real life, kind of similar to what, Ben, you have talked about experiencing. I ask because it seems like it could actually have a lot of benefits, from helping people better understand their bodies and what feels good, so to speak, or helping with sex drive differentials in relationships so that neither person feels so much stress from compromising, like the person really has to either go a lot without sex or the other person has to have sex a lot when they don't want to, or it could be really helpful with people who want to abstain from sex until the right time, and then they, if they can masturbate, they aren't so driven by the conflict between their morals and their biological instincts. Just curious what your perspective is on that. Thanks.
That's a really brave question.
You talk about. I'm kind of taller, but
Yeah, that I appreciate you asking. No, I do not believe that it's wrong. I think for some people it could be an escape mechanism, but I don't even really want to go there because I'll take care of him. Sorry guys, I'll be right back.
I'll go there. I don't even think escape mechanism is wrong. I would say an escape mechanism might be less beneficial, but I have to give the long answer to this, unfortunately, and forgive me if you've heard this one already, but one of my mindsets that has been changed recently in the last year or two was thinking about multiple personality disorder. So I have a relative that has multiple personality disorder, and they would put things in shopping carts and not know why those things were in the shopping cart because they were under a different personality when they did it. And we always kind of looked at them. And growing up in a Christian family, we dealt with people with mental disorders a bit. Man, I don't even know how to say it because it was so unsaid. But it was almost like they were doing something wrong. Like there was this thought, oh, you could pray yourself out of it. And drugs weren't seen as evil, but they were seen as subpar. And it was almost like you had the choice in some way, shape, or form for this mental disorder. Okay. And I remember reading it's really kind of crazy actually, but it's this famous self-help book called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It's one of the top selling business books of all time. And in this book, he says that significance is so important for people that if they can't find significance in this reality, they will create their own. And we were doing counseling at the time and having enough changes. And somehow I was able to make the realization that instead of viewing mental disorders, taking multiple personality disorder as an example, as someone who was wrong and bad or less healthy or something, seeing it as, wow, because the other side I didn't tell you was the same family member of how horrifically they were abused in their childhood. They were raped by their father, so they gave birth to their sibling at the age of 13 and were sexually abused to be paying off gambling debts, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, I don't want to get into it, but just things where you're like, oh, okay, so there's trauma there. And this reality was so painful that their brain created alternate pathways and realities to function in so that they didn't have to kill themselves in this reality. And coming from a spiritual perspective, I actually even think God created that capacity for people to create alternate realities so that they don't have to kill themselves because this reality is so unbearable for them. So in that way, I was now able to see multiple personality disorder as a miracle. And we'd be like, that is so much better than suicide. Mm-hmm. I'm so glad you're alive right now. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons why you're alive is because your brain has the ability to create alternate realities. Now, I wish for better wholeness and health for every person. And I don't always know what that looks like. But when we're talking about masturbation as a way to avoid reality, I guess one of the things I wonder now is what reality are they I don't want to say running from, because I think that even has a negative connotation, but what reality aren't they able to face right now? And how do we help that? And maybe masturbation is that, or alcohol, or
maybe you already talked about this, but maybe it's what she said. It's a way to deal with your biological urges.
Yeah,
There's
yeah, and
nothing wrong with
I'm all
that.
fine with that too.
Yeah.
So anyhow, that is way, way, way TMI rabbit trail on the masturbation thing. But since you just tossed that phrase in there as kind of the worst case scenario, and I didn't used to always believe that. I was more trained in the mindset of like reality's bad, or sorry, fantasy's bad, reality's good, and it was just like that. It was like really just that simple.
Right. What happens when reality is awful? Yeah.
Or what's the difference, and who gets to decide that? The Christian belief that I was raised in, like not necessarily in the church, but like what I think the Bible says is like God is the ultimate and only reality, and none of us are ready for it, can handle it right now. So none of us are in true reality. Like so any of the reality that we think we're in right now compared to other people is all kind of like fighting over breadcrumbs, in my opinion. Next question.
Hey guys, this is Shiloh from Texas. I was just wondering, I've noticed in the last 100 or so vlogs, y'all have moved a little bit further away from the quote-unquote letter of the law type of observance of worship. And I was wondering your view on whether the Bible is like the perfect writ straight from God or not. A lot of people think that it's a collection of stories over time, and some of them are completely God ordained, like the prophets and the stuff about Jesus, stuff like that. And I was wondering how y'all kind of walk the tightrope of avoiding the legalism that Jesus rebuked in the New Testament, and making sure that you're not just observing your faith the way that you want, and allowing your own way to determine how you observe faith. And because I know for me it's a big thing that I try to avoid. I always try to look to the scriptures, but also make sure I'm not being too legalistic. Anyways, just wondering what y'all thought about that. Thank y'all. Love the podcast. Bye.
Man, anytime everyone starts their question by saying, I've noticed in the last 100 episodes, it's like, damn.
Wow, thanks for
You've done your homework.
watching all those.
I like that.
Oh, man.
I feel like you know our souls.
Yeah.
Man, that's a question.
Mm-hmm.
Holy crap. To end on that.
So he's saying, how do you, yeah.
There's
what
so
do you
much
think
there.
about the scriptures, first of all?
Okay, so you asked, are the scriptures...
Bible.
I don't know what the word you use, but there's a big old debate right now of, is the Bible inerrant?
Which means
there's no errors in the current translation we have, I think. Of course, that question means different things to different people.
it's a spectrum.
It is a spectrum. I have zero confidence that the current translation we have is error free.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know how you can believe. I understand why people believe that, because I think they started asking this question, well, if I doubt this, then every verse that I'm hanging my life on could be false, and I can't trust any of it, and then why follow any of it? But to me, that's like, I don't know. There's so many layers to this question. I feel like this is its own podcast. I guess for me, the big thing that has changed was I used to see the Bible as a rule book. And to me, if you see it as a rule book, and if you're following the rules, then it needs to be inerrant on some way, because you need to know which rules to follow. But to me, the Bible was never intended to be that to us. Now, it records certain rules for certain people at certain times. But that was never the plan of what even the literature was intended for. Yeah. So it's like if we were really obsessed, if we discovered some ancient Roman stones that had some inscription for the rules of football, and we were like, we need to figure out what these say because we need to know how to play the game. Mm-hmm. You'd be like, no, you don't. Like, this is how they played the game. Isn't it interesting? And I actually think it's, I think it's more than that. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it's only a collection of stories either. So to me, the Bible can still be important and valuable without 100% translation. But it kind of needs to come down to what you see the Bible is there for. Mm-hmm. But most of my life and most of the religious world that I grew up in, even the ones that said they don't treat it like a rule book, at the end of the day, they treat it like a rule book.
And what I don't like is if you believe, I haven't yet seen a person that believes the Bible is inerrant, means no errors.
Inerrant means without errors.
Yeah. I haven't yet to see a person who believes that doesn't use the Bible in some shape or form as a weapon against other people and against themselves.
Just to make everyone's life simpler, I'm going to post a link to a podcast that was really influential to us in this last year that I think gave me a new way to see the Bible. And it was by Richard Rohr. I think it was The Bible for Normal People was the name of the podcast. And it was an interview with Richard Rohr. And something about, maybe it was just me at that time period, but the way it hit me, I was like, oh, like, yeah, it just changed everything for me in a way that I can't do justice to right now. Oh my gosh, wow.
All right.
So I'm really curious to hear what you guys' thoughts are on this episode with the Casey Neistat video. Of course, we'll post all these links in the show notes if you actually want to watch a Casey Neistat video or read the article, although, I'm not recommending any of that. It didn't blow my mind. But I want to hear, is there something in your life that you are putting off because you don't think you have enough money? But in reality, you could start this week.
That you want to.
But you don't think you can because you're saying someday, when I get my next raise, that's when I'm going to start that thing.
Someday never comes.
Oh. Nice.
Who's that by? I don't know.
Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Oh, okay.
That's what I would like to hear from you guys if you're up for sharing something. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Do the right thing that you're supposed to do as podcast listeners. You guys know what that is. And if you want to leave us a message for a future podcast, the phone number is 206-651-5744. That's 206-651-5744. Thanks for listening, guys.
See you next time.
Thank you for listening to Fight for Together. We'll see you next time.